Hello and welcome to the Aviatrix Book Review. I'm Liz Booker. My guest today is a Swiss-born bush pilot with her Canadian citizenship who has flown international missions that have taken her to rugged locations all over Africa and the Middle East. Her latest work has her fighting wildfires in Canada. In her memoir, They Called Me Sky Hunter, which is the Aviatrix Book Review discussion book for July 2022, she takes us on her incredible journey with all of its joys and challenges to pursue her dreams of flying and living her childhood fantasy, inspired by the memoir Out of Africa by Karen Blixen. You can find her on her website at mimihuser.com and on Instagram at Myriam Huser, where you'll see her spectacular photos and videos of incredible nature scenes and her current aviation adventures. Myriam Huser, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I've been thrilled about your story and having the chance to read all of your adventures and talk about them in the book club, but especially to talk to you about them. And you wrote this memoir during COVID. Why did you write it, and who was your audience?
Actually, I started writing it a few years ago already. I had the idea pushed by mostly friends and coworkers over the years who've been telling me, you need to write a book about all your stories. So I did start it, and then I put it aside because I had already tried to publish it, and I tried to find someone to do it. And either I never got any messages back or it was a negative response. So I kind of put it away. And so when COVID hit and I found myself with no work, I said, well, I have nothing else to do. Let's take that book back. And I took it over, I rewrote part of it. And then I needed to find a way to publish it. And the way I am, like when I put something in my head that I want to do it, I want to do it now. And I didn't want to wait years trying to find the classic way to do it. So I have very good friends who the husband wrote a book and he did a self-publish. So we discussed it, and he gave me the information with who he used. I looked into it and I really liked it, what I saw. So I contacted them, and that's how it started. So I am a self-published. It's a company based on Vancouver Island. And so I went from there. I just rewrote and I added the last few chapters that I didn't had yet done. And I used their editor because, as you can hear my accent, my first language is French. So writing and I wrote it in English, but it's not perfect. I'm not perfect in English, so I needed a professional editor, to go over it. I did ask though not to change the story, really to keep what I've been writing. We did cut down some because they wanted to keep it around 80,000 words, no more, and I had, I think, over 100 already. So I did had to cut it down. And they also asked me just to add more the personal life, because I didn't write too much. I didn't want to inject too much of my personal life in it. It was mainly about all my adventure. But I was told, people like to hear more about personal life and
I think you got great advice. I just want you to know, on all counts, because it is incredibly easy to publish your own work now, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
But it feels like you went about it the right way by making sure that you had a professional editor, and that, that advice, it is true that it's really hard to get people to read a memoir, first of all, that is much longer than 80,000 words. And then also, the personal stories are what make us care about you. And so
Exactly.
I think that was really important that you, and I'm sure it was scary to do that.
It was very scary because I'm very introverted and shy. And even my coworker, my friends, they know me, but they don't really know me because my personal life is really tucked in. And that's the way I am, the way I like it. So it was really hard to bring some of it, to have to talk about it. But I did make the effort. And I think I just put in enough to make it interesting without giving away too much of what I didn't want to give away.
I understand. And I kind of sensed, I could see where you were just trying to let us know that this happened or something was going on, but it was obvious that you didn't want to be specific about that. And I respect that. And I think that that's wonderful, and an important message for people who are considering writing their memoirs. But so here's my question then. Why do you think all your friends were telling you should write a book?
I guess because I have an interesting life. That's the funny thing about it, because for me, it's just normal. It's my normal life. It's all I've done all my life, this type of life. I don't see anything special about it anymore. But hearing them saying it, like, well, okay, maybe it's not the normal, what most people do. And it's out of the ordinary. So, yeah.
It certainly is. It certainly is. And it's even, I speak to a lot of adventurous women in this project, and women who have done some amazing things and gone and done crazy things. But yes, yours is special in its own way. And so I thought it would be fun if you would just rattle off as many of the places that you've flown. And you can just maybe tell us where you've been based, because I know it would take us an hour to get through all the places that you've actually flown. But tell us some of the places that you've been based.
Okay, so I'm going to try to keep track of one after one.
Chronologically?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was born and raised in Switzerland. So my first 20 years I spent there with my study and everything. When I turned 20, I finished my apprenticeship and I left. I spent 1 year in California where I learned English with the family. I had 4 kids to take care of. And that's where I started. I did my private pilot license during that year, flying during the weekends. And so I started in California. Then I went back home for 3 months, found a professional school, went back to the States, and I was in Arizona, in Tucson, where I got all my commercial instrumentality. And after 6 months, I went back to Switzerland, converted everything, because I had to take some tests again for the conversion. My first job, I was flying for a local company on the Cessna 206, doing sightseeing tours above the Alps. I wasn't paid. It was just a way to build up time. I had a pager at the time, and they would call me up when people were interested for a flight. So I would just quickly go to the airport and jump in the plane, give them a tour. And it started like that. And that company had some King Air 90 and 200 to do some scheduled flights. So at some point, they got me the type rating to fly right seat. And I just did a little bit of that. And after that, I left with, I was with my ex at the time. So he had a contract. He was a pilot as well. He had a contract to fly in Madagascar. So off we went to Madagascar, and I spent a year there. The company, when the owner heard I was a pilot, he offered me the chance to fly their little single-engine aircraft. It was a Piper Comanche. So I would fly around the island with the Comanche. And they have a Chieftain on the King Air as well. So once in a while, I could ride right seat on those ones. At the end of that year, we left Madagascar, and he wanted to immigrate to Canada. So we came to Canada, but we were not immigrant yet. We didn't have the right to work. So we spent time between Canada and USA every 3 months, in and out, just for paper, for the visa and the stamp on the passport. And I flew just a little bit here and there while he was having a job. He was able to take me on once in a while on the right seat, but that was just a few hours here and there. So during that year, I really didn't fly much. Then we got offered a job back in Europe because we took way too much time to get the visa to immigrate in Canada. So we went back to Europe, and I got hired by a company in Denmark to fly on the Beech 1900 right seat. And that was big for me because at the time I had 600 hours total. So it was a great way to start, having a turboprop as well, and having that full type rating. So I did some scheduled flying in Europe, Denmark, then to Sweden, flew around Europe for a while. From there, I tried to get a job in Africa because that's where I wanted to do. And I went to Morocco. But after a few months sitting and nothing was happening, I left again because in the meantime, we got our visa to immigrate to Canada. So we came back to Canada, and it was 2001, just after 9/11. Nothing was happening in aviation. So I found myself stuck for 4 years with no flying. And after 4 years, finally things starting, I just could not afford to pay for my conversion to get a Canadian license. So I was looking elsewhere. And that's when I got the contract to fly for AirServe. Went to Jordan to fly into Iraq. So that was 2004. So also flying on the Beech 1900. I did that for a while, then came back to Canada. It was kind of like pushed back from my ex, who was kind of, I think you read it in the story many times. I think he was holding me back. He wanted me there and not flying. And anyway, so
yeah, I'd like to talk more about that in a minute.
Okay. I went back to Canada and I did other jobs. I was working at a ski resort, selling the tickets, cleaning bathrooms, being a lifty. And after that, I had enough of this. Like, I wanted to fly. So I contacted AirServe again, and they offered me initially a contract to go to Afghanistan. And I said, yeah, I want to go. And it was just before Christmas. So they said, we'll talk again after the holiday. And in January, when they called me back, like, yeah, we're going to cancel that. And it was actually just a short-term contract for, I think, 3 months. But some people didn't want to send a woman there, so they canceled it. They said, if you're interested to sign a 1-year contract, we might have something in Africa for you. Like, I couldn't say no. It was my dream. So the choice was either to go to Congo or to Chad. And in Congo, it would have been King Air, and it would have been the Twin Otter in Chad. And I always wanted to fly the Twin Otter. So I was like, take me to Chad. So that's how I ended up in Chad. And I did my full year. And at the end of the year, I was enjoying it so much that I renewed for a second year. They never had anyone even finishing the first year because the conditions were really rough. But I was loving it. I was loving my life finally. So yeah, I stayed 2 years in Chad. When I left Chad, I joined a Swiss company doing oil and gas crew change, still on the Twin Otters. So, and it was in the same time that I left Canada and I left my ex at the time. So I settled down in south of France, in Provence, and was flying into Algeria for my rotation because I was working 5 weeks on, 5 weeks off. And so I would go back and forth to Algeria for 3 years, 5 weeks at work, then enjoying my life in south of France. And after three and a half years in Algeria with the same company, they started a contract in Uganda, still for oil and gas crew change. And it was on a brand new Twin Otter, which was taken over by Viking. So I had a chance to go on that one, and I left. And for me, it was at that time that I could really fulfill my dream of living full-time in Africa. So I took all my belongings that I could, 2 big bags, and started my contract in Uganda. And within a month, I was settled. I rented a house and settled down there. And I spent 3 years in Uganda. And at the end of those 3 years, there was a lot happening in the company. People were trying to push me out as well because it was the best spot to be. And they couldn't really take me out because I lived there full time. So that's where it all started, the difficulties anyway. And also my health and security-wise, it was getting hard, and it was time for change. It was a very difficult decision, but I left Africa and I came back to Canada. And when I came back to Canada, I settled in the Vancouver area, and I was going to go back with the same company, do those rotations, flying in and out from Canada. But those people who were trying to push me out, they found the best time to do it, because I had taken 3 months off unpaid leave to settle here. And it was the easy time for them to say, we don't need you anymore. So that's how it ended. But all in all, it worked out well for me, because I had already spoken to a company in US who were doing survey flying in Africa, or all over the world actually. But at the time they needed someone for Africa. So I was able to jump on right away. And I did contract doing survey flying. And I think I would still be there if it lasted, but...
Where was that? Where did you do that? That was in...
Yeah, I was in Niger. So my first
Niger.
contract, I was in Niger. So I did 8 weeks survey Niger. Then I was 8 weeks off. And then I went back. I had to ferry the airplane from Malta down to Kenya for the next survey. And I pretty much sat there because it was slow to start. We didn't fly much. And when it was time to go back home, it was summer. So I enjoyed summer. And at that same time, the client lost the contract. It was when there was a downturn with the oil and gas industry. Mm-hmm. And they told me, like, we know you are not US citizen, you're only a contractor, but we really want to keep you. And they tried to keep me, and they were actually releasing the other pilots one by one. Like, no, we want to keep you. But at the end, they lost all the contracts. So after the end of the summer, like, we're sorry, there's nothing left. So they had to let me go as well. And I had to start looking, okay, what do I do now? So I sat down and I wrote my exams to finally get my Canadian license. So converted everything to get my ATPL here. And that's when I started sending my CV all over. It was a harsh winter because not much happening in aviation in Canada during the winter. Mm-hmm. I had no idea where I would go from there. But in that spring, that's when I had a call to go do the firefighting, and another dream come true.
And that's what you're doing now, right?
And that's what I'm doing now. Yeah.
I know you had a break. I know you had a break in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I can't wait to hear about that. Oh my gosh, there's so much to talk about. Like, whew, you have really, and I agree with all of your friends, with all of those adventures that you had to share them. And it's so inspiring for somebody who wants to live an adventurous life like that. It also doesn't sound like it's for the meek in multiple ways. I mean, having to, like, you talk in the book about health issues and security issues in the places that you live, the challenging flight conditions, but also the challenge of having a dependable career when you're working a contract like that and your contract might expire or something happens. So there are so many challenges, and you talk about them in the book. Yeah, but I just am amazed by everything that you lived through and continue to do. So let's just sum up the missions. You have done, you said sightseeing in the Alps, humanitarian missions in Iraq, and also in Chad. What were you doing in Chad? Yeah. In Madagascar, you were, what did you say, ferrying?
No, in Madagascar was a private company who owned a textile, and they had.
So it was like kind of like corporate flying a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
On the smaller aircraft, and then this survey work. Tell us a little bit about what survey flying is like.
So survey, we had 3 different systems on board. That one was called LiDAR, and the other one I can't even remember. And it was very specific, and we were not even allowed to take picture of it because it was so secretive. Yeah. But it was mainly to research what's on the ground, right? What kind of minerals or oil, and what's for the oil and gas industry as well. And I'm sure there were other things that I don't ask. I'm just doing my job. I'm just flying the aircraft.
And when you're flying it, it's a very specific, like rigid pattern. It's like for me,
Yes.
it sounded like a search and rescue pattern that we would fly looking for a person in the water. Like
Yes.
that's how we would fly it,
Yeah, we had a system. I believe the crop dusting have a similar system. We're not looking at our instruments at all. You look outside, or not even outside. There's a little bar with the dots, and we were not allowed to go off track more than 20 meters right or left or up or down. It's like being on an ILS at the very end of the ILS for hours. So
so you had a heads up display.
Yeah.
And okay, that sounds. I mean, it sounds like very focused work, very exhausting. Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
you don't do to just relax and enjoy the scenery.
And no, you don't have time to look at the scenery when we were two pilots, so we could, we would share. So one would do one line, then in the turn we would switch over, and the other one would fly it. In the meantime, the other one can relax a bit, and also in the same time overlook that everything is going well. And also not to forget, we are 100, 200 feet off the ground, and like in Nigeria in the desert, in the heat and sandstorm season, it's super hot. There's no air conditioning. I was just sitting in my sweat all day long.
Yes, I can only imagine. It did not sound, I can relate in many ways, but yes, that sounds challenging. And it also sounds like an interesting way to get to exotic or rugged places that you might not go otherwise. And also an interesting way to build hours.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because we were flying a lot. We were flying 8 to 9 hours. We would fly all morning, take a quick break for lunch, and back in the air in the afternoon. So you build up hours quickly when you do those.
Yeah. Well, it's so cool. I love hearing about all the experiences. I loved reading about them, and we'll get to some more in a minute. But one of the things I wanted to share is that, in this experience of reading all these books about women and by women from across our history, I've been talking a lot about how I am starting to see the connections. And maybe it's because I'm someone who likes to network other people. I am starting to visualize where I fit in the network of women. And I'm talking about like 1 degree of separation from like our early aviation pioneers, both like in the 1920s and 30s, but also our military aviation pioneers and all of that. But what I was struck by in your book was the opening of chapter 1. I just had this incredible moment where you say, it all began with the teenage dream. In 1986, I was 13, definitely a tomboy, and was already feeling out of place compared to the other girls at school. My bedroom was plastered with posters, but they weren't images of actors or singers. No, I had posters of F-14 Tomcats instead. I was 13 in 1986, and I had posters of F-14 Tomcats on my wall. And I just had this image of you sitting in your little Swiss village, the same age that I was.
Amazing.
sitting in my house in Houston, Texas, very close to Johnson Space Center. And both of us having this dream.
That's so cool.
That we wanted to fly, and both of us feeling a little out of place with our peers because of it. So I just thought that was a really special connection. And then I had some struggles as a teenager too, and it took me a little longer actually to get my pilot's license than it did you. But then my career was really condensed into a decade and a half, and then I have done other things also. But anyway, I just thought it was lovely to add you to that list of connections that I'm building through that image of a 13. And because I write, I think, for young adults, and I think about, that young person having a dream and just to know that you were there having it at the same time that I was. I thought that was really special.
It's awesome. That year when I had all those posters, it was when first Top Gun came out, right?
Yep. Exactly. Yep. Which was really fun to relive at this age for the second one. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
Oh, 3 times.
Oh, yeah. Good for you. That's so great. That's awesome.
Yeah. But that dream started earlier than that.
And for me too. I was 5, but yes, tell us yours.
Like, I don't even know what age I was, because as far as I remember, I was fascinated with aviation. Mm-hmm. And when I was a kid, my parents took us to an air show, a local air show that was happening every 4 years. And I think must have been 7 or 8 the first time, or maybe even earlier. I know I was always fascinated. And when I was 10 years old, we were on vacation in Spain, when the last day we were supposed to go back home the day after, but we went to the beach and we saw that huge ship out there, and we realized it was an air carrier. And we could see the boats going back and forth from the port to go on it. So we went to the port, see what was happening, and we saw that people could go on board to visit. So of course I was like, I want to go.
Yeah.
And my parents extended the vacation for 1 extra days, because we finally, at the end of the day, walking around, a man came to my parents and my brother and I, and he said, I've been seeing you all day around here. Have you had a chance to go on board? And my parents said, no. So like, I'll take you tomorrow. And he was the secretary of the captain. And so we organized for the next day. I was able to go on board, and it was the USS Saratoga.
That's so cool.
And I remember walking, especially on the deck, and seeing those jets. I would put my hand on the wings, and I was like, one day I'll be flying too.
There you go, Navy. Mission accomplished. You go off and do your public affairs things in foreign countries, and here we go.
Yeah. And that's when also I realized I was born in the wrong country for this type of work, because in Switzerland they didn't
no aircraft carriers.
Yeah, they didn't take a female pilot for military jets. So I think if I was born in USA, I would probably join.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you would have. So let's talk about that a little bit, and where our paths diverged. So I was so excited to see that, like you said, when you came to the United States, you were 18, you said?
I was 20.
20. So you were 20, you're in the United States, and you took advantage of that opportunity to start learning how to fly. And then this story where I was like, oh, she's off. And she's going to go live her dreams. And then there's a guy. And so I felt like parts of your story, I will confess, I felt very frustrated in the first sort of half of the book.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that as a reader, so I can only imagine your feelings about it. But I feel like it echoes some other stories that we've read about women who get into relationships that stifle them from being able to really achieve their dreams. And I thought that you were conciliatory. So every relationship requires compromise and sacrifice. The relationships don't work without that. However, you were heavily on the giving end of that. And so why did you choose to include that in the book? And what advice do you have for other people who may find themselves in a relationship like this, as much as you want to talk about?
Yeah. It's very hard. For me, I went pretty much from my parents to him. I never knew anything else. I was kind of raised of always saying yes and do whatever I was told to do. And I'm also somebody who just loves pleasing people. So I put myself aside to please everyone else, and I forget myself. And that's what I've been doing all those years with him. It was always him first, and me, well, can come later. But of course,
for anyone who hasn't read the book, to be clear, what we're talking about is this pilot boyfriend that you had who you were following around so that he could pursue his flying career.
Yes.
And you were fitting your flying into the cracks when you could.
Exactly.
But a lot of the time you weren't able to fly, and you were doing these things, like you said, working at a ski resort. I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that right now? Go fly.
Yeah, It just because there was nothing else I could do. There was no job. I didn't have enough experience. I was still trying to build up. I know the whole story. It took me 10 years to build up my first 1,000 hours.
Yeah.
10 years. And to pay back my loan because I had to borrow a lot of money to get on my license. I never had any help. My family never helped me. So it took 10 years. And I was doing the job because I had to do something. And he wanted more than he could afford, really. So we had a big house, he wanted a big truck, and we were always scraping. At the end of the months were hard. So, and there was a time when he was not working at all. And I was working, trying to pay the bill with my old salary, working in a hotel.
That was particularly frustrating that he couldn't deign to do something other than flying.
Yeah.
But that's what you had been doing all of this time. So it's very frustrating.
It is extremely frustrating. And it's funny because you're not the first one who told me that reading the book, like I was getting frustrated. But at the time, I didn't see it. It's all I knew. I didn't know any better. So it was just normal. And it's only when I left for Chad on my own, working over there, finally living my life, that it opened my eyes. I'm like, this is not normal, what's happening?
Well, I think this is one important aspect of memoir and books for people who might find themselves in that situation who may not even really see it themselves. Because sometimes when you're in something, you cannot see the effect that it's having on you or how it's preventing you from living your best life. But by reading other people's stories, you can recognize patterns of behavior and kind of hopefully look in the crystal ball and see where this thing is ultimately going to go and hopefully stop what's happening for yourself.
Exactly.
So I know that you mentioned that it was really hard to share your personal story, but I think that it's so important that you did.
Yeah. I realized that afterward that if I didn't include that, many people would not understand part of my story, why I did that and not this. And so it was important for sure.
Oh my gosh, there's so many fun things to talk about. So of all the places that you flew, what was your favorite and why? And what was the most challenging and why?
It's really hard to choose because I loved everything. But if I would have a chance to go back and redo one more time something, it would be Chad doing humanitarian work. Because that was actually my first dream from the very beginning. Working for AirServe was my first dream even before I started flying. When I was doing research, I've heard about them. I'm like, flying to help other people, it's just everything I wanted to do. So those 2 years in Chad flying humanitarian work was just incredible. I gotta say, not one day was the same, even though we were doing the same route. There was so much happening. I would, even though it was not easy because conditions were really tough. I mean, it was getting really hot. We were in the desert, semi-desert as well. We were living in a crew house all together. Sometimes there was no water at all. When it was before the rainy season, for the 2 last months of the dry season, the well was empty. So we would have to drive the truck on the other side of town with barrel to find some water. So we had each a bucket of water, and that's all you get for the day. You can do whatever you want with it, but that's it. Health-wise, food was not always, clean. We were 3 pilots for a good reason because there was most of the time one that was down with something.
Yeah, I believe that.
So we were doing the work for humanitarian work, going to the refugee camps, but there was also the war, like internal war, rebel group who want to take over the government, and then there was still the Janjaweed coming from the Sudanese side into Chad. I mean, there were so many different conflicts. The villages were fighting amongst each other for cattle, water, and land. And so there was a lot going on out there, but it all made it so interesting.
Yeah. You mentioned AirServe. I first read about AirServe in a Women in Aviation or an Aviation for Women magazine article in 2005, probably. It was on the cover, I remember. And I read this article. And I mean, I'd been doing humanitarian flying. That's a lot of what the Coast Guard does. I'd flown a lot around Haiti and Cuba and that kind of stuff,
Nice.
in addition to doing like search and rescue and those kinds of things. So I was already in that world. And it was reading that, I read that article at the time when I had the inception for my novel idea. And AirServe inspired an aspect of the fiction that I'm writing right now, in which one of my characters basically has her own nonprofit humanitarian flying service.
Awesome.
So I just thought that was really cool too, that you actually got to fly with them, because I've always kind of followed them with fondness and even considered like spending some time with them for research for the book. But I've read so much about their work and many other organizations like them. So yeah.
It's been a few years that they don't have anything set up anymore under AirServe International, though the company still exists. But they have AirServe Limited, which is a branch of them, who's still in Uganda, in Entebbe, and they do maintenance, and they still have Cessna Caravan. They do fly in and out for humanitarian work. So they still kind of exist under a different branch. But yeah, it was so fulfilling to be able to help other people while living my own dream.
So if somebody wanted to get into that, what would you recommend?
The way I did, I just sent my CV, sent my resume, contact them. I contacted so many companies all over Africa, different organizations, until one day, you get the call and you manage to get in. It's like...
So tell me, you say in the book, and I talked about it in the introduction, about how, you were inspired to fly, but there was also this inspiration from Karen Blixen's Out of Africa.
Yes.
Say more about that. Like, what do you think the draw was for you to Africa?
Even before Out of Africa, I mean, I remember having all those encyclopedia at home where I would, go through the pages, all the different countries in the world. I always loved looking at maps. It's something, about the world, different country, different continent. I was drawn to that very young. And seeing the photos of the savannah, and the big landscapes, elephants, giraffes, and all this, there was just something. I was like, I can't even explain. It's like I was drawn to Africa. And then the other story about the desert, as you notice in the way I explain it, my first love was flying in the desert, and that's where he died. And I think that's why I have that connection with the desert, and I always love to go back to it because I feel the connection out there.
Yeah, that was a heartbreaking story, and I'm so sorry that happened to you. And in a moment in your life, I mean, where love is special anytime in your life, but when you're that age, it's the most important thing in the world. So I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time, but yeah, it's still very much part of who I am and what I do.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very common that young people, that children, I know my children all, sit with books about exotic animals and exotic places and are drawn to them. But it's the rare person who goes and lives it. So I think that that's really amazing that you found a way to make that a life. It's incredible.
I think it's just part of my character. I don't know how to explain, because some people are like, why? How are you doing all this? Why? And when I put something in my head, I don't think too much. I just go for it. And, like we could talk about something today, let's go to this country, let's do that. You can be sure by tomorrow, the balls is rolling. I'm making it happening. Like, I just have to. And maybe that's why I'm doing all this, because I don't give myself the time to think about it. I just plunge in there. I just go. And then it's too late because it's going. So I have to keep going.
Yep. No time to be afraid of it at that point. You're on it.
Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah. And that's one thing I hear a lot. People saying, well, aren't you afraid? Are you not scared? I would be so scared to do this or that. Like, if you want to do something, you have to. Don't think, just do. Go. Do it.
I love it. Are you, so while we're still in Africa, are you familiar with Patty Wagstaff and the things that she's doing?
I didn't know she was doing that work out there. I know her name because when I was a young pilot, I heard her doing air show. And I might have seen her at one of the air show probably when I was in USA once. But I didn't know what she was doing now.
I just want to, I think anyone who knows who Patty is probably knows this, but, there's this connection between the person that I'm collaborating with on this project is Shasta Ways. And Shasta and her business partner, Michael, helped me produce the videos that I'm in, the interviews that I'm doing. But Shasta has her own podcast as well. And she did an interview with Patty where they talked a lot about the mission. And so I'll send you a link to that. And maybe I'll link in the show notes for other people. But I just remembered Shasta asking her toward the end of the interview, if somebody wanted to go to Africa and help you, do this training for the bush pilots out there, what would they need? And she just talked about somebody would need a lot of bush experience. And so I was like, oh, well, I know somebody who is very well qualified for this if she wants to do it. So let me know if you want me to connect you with Patty, because I will.
No, because with my job now, I'm working in the summer, but I have all winter free. So
would you like to be connected?
Well, why not?
Okay, we'll get you in touch. And Patty's a big reader. Patty has her own memoir. It's the old days though. It's from her air show time.
Nice.
That you can read. But I'll tell her about yours. She's a big reader, so I know that she'll read your book. And so I think that'll be cute. That'll be really great if you guys would get in touch with each other. I think that'd be awesome.
I have looked into doing this kind of work. Actually, through Instagram, I met a young girl from Europe who she did went down to not DRC, Central African Republic, to do some anti-poaching with a small light aircraft, surveilling. And we were talking about it. I know it was kind of hard because they were asked the experience on the aircraft already, which I didn't have at the time.
Yeah.
And then it took a long time for all the paperwork to get set up to go and do that. But over the years, I've looked into, because that's the kind of work I just love. Put the animals and the flying together or helping.
I know. I thought it sounded like your bag, man.
Yeah.
So tell me about the firefighting now. So what's the big gorgeous aircraft that I stole a little video of yours and I posted it. What's that plane?
I'm still so excited about it because it's still quite new. I just started this year on it. I'm flying on the Lockheed Electra. So
it's beautiful.
It's incredible. It's just the old ways, right? Old cockpit. Those aircraft are from the late 50s, early 60s. So it's just incredible to fly. I'm loving it. And firefighting, as I've done it already a few years ago, before the pandemic and before I got sick and I had to stop. So I already had a couple of years of experience doing firefighting. So that part I already had it. To my advantage. And the company I'm working right now is in the same province where I live. And I just came back 2 days ago for my 4 days off, and I'm heading back out after tomorrow. We had a slow start of the season, but the last 2 weeks we've been very, very busy. It started to burn quite a bit up north. So I know I'm going to be very busy again for the coming months.
And what does that mean? What does busy mean for you? Tell us about like a normal day.
A normal day. So we're on call at certain hours. Usually mornings are pretty chill. We can stay at the hotel. Depending on the risk, we can start 9 or 10 or sometimes only at noon. And it's coded in colors. So you can be on blue alert, on yellow or red alert. For us on blue alert, you can just wait at the hotel if you're not too far, because you have 1 hour to get airborne if you get called. On yellow, it's half an hour. On red alert, it's 5 minutes. So yellow and red, most of the time we sit at the tanker base at the airport, and the aircraft is ready to go, and we just sit, keep busy, and wait for the horn to sound. Sometimes the day can be very long because you can be sitting all day and nothing happened. Or like a few days ago, one day we waited, you sit all day, and then the risks started to go up, and some other team, some other group went to fires. So like, they might be calling us to help as well. And it was like, they extended our alert. So our red alert extended to like 8 o'clock, then 9 o'clock for blue. And 3 minutes before the end of alert at 8, we got the horn. So you get up, you run, jump in the plane, you load, and off you go. And then you fly until sundown pretty much. And when you come back, you have to, fuel up, wash the plane, because it's part of my job too. So you big hose and washing all the retardant of the tank. It can be 11 midnight when you're done. So it can make for very long days. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But rewarding, I'm sure.
Oh, so rewarding. And the flying is incredible.
That's so great. I'm so excited for you that you're doing that.
Yeah.
And so that's a summer job. And then in the winter, how are you spending your winters?
I'm probably just going to enjoy my life. This year, I'm planning to go back to Switzerland to visit my mom. So yeah, I want to enjoy. I love the outdoors. So as you probably saw on my Instagram, I want to enjoy some hiking and road tripping, because I can't do that in summer anymore. So that's going to be at least the fall. And winter, I'm probably going to drive south where it's warmer. I hate the winter up here.
Well, I wanted to talk about that a little bit too. Just, there's lots of flying adventures in your book, but there are also all these other outdoor adventures. You just seem to be very deeply embedded with nature.
Yeah.
And yes, so everybody go check out Myriam Huser on Instagram. She is a fabulous videographer. Like, you take these really cool videos. What's that device that you're using to make the world look like you're standing on top of it? How do you do that?
That's a 360 camera.
It's so cool.
It films everything around you, and the cool thing about it, you can just set it somewhere, don't touch it, record everything, and everything is edited in the app after that. You can, make it zoom in, zoom out, or change, it's fun.
I need one of those. Yeah, your videos and your images are so beautiful. And what got you into doing that stuff, like the photography and the videos?
COVID.
Yeah.
COVID, because when COVID started, I was actually in Papua New Guinea. I was starting a new contract over there, flying on a Twin Otter. And when they started shutting the borders and everything, I found the last seat on the last aircraft to come back to Canada before they closed the border and everything.
Wow.
Yeah, I was really lucky I made it back. But then I got stuck here and nothing. And, aviation, as everybody knows, went down pretty bad.
Yeah. So you just went outside.
So I went outside and I grabbed my camera and I thought, well, why not? I'm going to try like all those people doing photography and videography. So I spent thousands of hours watching YouTube video on learning how to shoot, how to edit, color grade, and sound effect and everything. And I managed to get all the contract for a local tourism company I shot 3 videos for them for their website. So that gave me a little money as well, because it was pretty hard the last 2 years without nothing.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up doing all those videos, and I'm just enjoying it.
That's so great. So before we wrap things up, I wanted to talk first of all about the title of the book. Okay. I know it's in the book, but tell us how the title of the book came.
Well, at first I wanted to call it only Sky Hunter, but apparently there was already a book called only Sky Hunter. I'm like, what?
Oh, yeah.
And also the company told me that I should add like something before or after, and that's why I chose They Call Me Sky Hunter because that's what happened. I don't want to say too much about it because people will have to read it.
I love that. Good for you. That's a good teaser. Well, I love it too. And that's so interesting that you just said that. I feel like so many memoirs out there. And I love all of you ladies. I love all of you, but they are these just like, there's the name and then there's the subtitle and it's usually like 10 words long. But it's great. Like yours would be Sky Hunter, the story of a bush pilot all over Africa. Like that's what it would be. But then like when I try and write articles about these books and I try and include a bunch of books, I have like, I only have 600 words and I have Anyway, thank you for the brevity on the I don't know, the title. They Called Me Sky Hunter. But let's talk about the cover.
Yes.
The cover art.
The cover.
I know this. I saw that this was a photograph that you have in the book.
It is.
I hadn't seen that before.
Yes, it's based on the photo taken by my co-worker at the time. He was my co-pilot flying on the Twin Otter, and that was taken in Algeria on one of the oil fields. And I can't even remember exactly when, but it was a connection. Christina, the painter, who found me, I think, on Instagram. And at the time, she was painting different aircraft, and she loved aviation. And she contacted me and she asked me if I had a few photos I could send her to give her ideas to paint something. And I sent her 3 or 4 different pictures. And she picked this one. She really loved it. So she made a painting about it. And for quite a few years, she had the painting. She never sold it. And later on, she told me she had it hanging in her bedroom, actually. And so when I started doing the book, and I was thinking, what should I do for the cover? I want something a little catchy, like, I wonder if she would agree. And so I contacted her again, like, would you agree that I use your painting for the cover? And she was thrilled, of course. So that was really cool. So that's how it ended up. And once the book was published, was out there, and I knew then she still had the painting. And I was talking one day with my mom, like, I love this painting. My mom bought it for me, and right now it's hanging right here on my wall.
Oh, that's lovely. Oh, that's so great.
Yeah,
that's a great story. Yeah, so the artist is Cristina R. de Castaneda.
Yeah.
Yep. And she does have a beautiful website and Instagram page as well. And you know what? It's like a little bit of cross promotion for both of you.
Exactly.
So, everybody wins. I love it.
Exactly. And it's funny because we never met in person yet. We never had a chance. But this fall, when I go back, we're going to organize something so we can meet up finally.
Well, Myriam, this has been just lovely. Your story is very inspirational, also instructional for people to think about, especially in the relationship side. We didn't get to talk much about it, but also health-wise, let's do that really quickly. Like, I feel like pilots are so dependent on our health. And if this was a thing that I told people in the military, or I tell people, junior pilots all the time, do everything that you can to get established as a pilot. And then as soon as you do, make sure you find something else to get good at so that you have a fallback plan, because we all will find ourselves, whether for a moment and sometimes unexpectedly permanently, unable to fly. What advice do you have for pilots who find themselves in those situations where their health is getting in the way?
Yeah, I say the exact same thing. Have something to fall back. Have a different type of work that you're good at, you can do. Because like that, it can just end very quickly. And then what? It's really hard. And do everything, you can to keep your health. I mean, for me, it was hard because I went to places that's pretty harsh on your system, and quite a few times I got sick. I had to stop, and the last time, it's toward the end of the book, when I started my firefighting season, my first firefighting job. On my 3rd year after the training, I stepped down because I knew something was wrong. My brain was not functioning. And that's when I started, looking at what's going on. And I've been having trouble for years already, on and off, and never really figured it out. But the way I am, I always push myself, keep going. And it's also part of it because I don't have a choice. I'm all by myself. I have nobody I can rely on. So I kept pushing. But at that time, it was too much, and my body just stopped. I could barely walk 100 meters, and I was exhausted for the rest of the day. And so I really had to do something about it. And I'm very lucky. To have found someone who figured it out and put me back on my feet and brought me back to my 100%. But
I'm happy for you. I'm going to mention this other book that hopefully we'll get to in the book club at some point, but it's actually by a fellow Coast Guard person. She was a flight mechanic in the Coast Guard, and she had a similar experience, and her body just quit on her. So it's called The Hurricane Within by Ashley Leppert, who was a Coast Guard flight mechanic who was in the middle of standing in the doorway, hoisting during a search and rescue case during a hurricane or hurricane recovery operations, that her body just quit on her.
Wow.
And she'd been experiencing things, and she was pushing herself. So she was able to figure it out finally too. And the book tells us more about that. But I just thought I was grateful that you shared those things as well, because everybody at some point is going to encounter something that's going to hold them back, at least temporarily.
Yeah.
So.
And that's one thing, like, no matter how much my story might seem amazing and beautiful and I want to do this, but it's not all roses. There's a lot of hardship behind. And your body and your mind takes a beating. At some point, you have to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you did. You're back in the air. I'm so happy for you. Thank you so much for your story, for taking the time to write it and share it with us. I'm glad that your friends encouraged you to do that. And thank you for your time to interview with me today. I appreciate it so much, especially in the short time that you have off to take the time to talk.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for doing this, because I'm sure it helps a lot of us out there doing this with passion and trying to share the story and have people hearing about it and to influence, the new generation. It's really needed. So thank you for what you do as well.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks to the Women's SOAR Group for their assistance in producing this interview. The Women's SOAR Group is a media company that gives women a platform to express themselves. Please join us in the Aviatrix Book Club next month, when we will discuss the book Fly Girls by Keith O'Brien. Blue skies and happy reading.
Here I am, I'm ready to go again. I'm ready to say